The learning process is a lot like a puzzle. You find out something exists and you start to piece together bits of information until you have a clear understanding or picture of how and what said thing is. As your journey into the learning process continues, you'll pick up pieces of the puzzle that may or may not go together, but still contribute to the overall picture. Whenever you start a puzzle, oftentimes it's suggested that you find the corner pieces and border pieces as early as possible. Competitive puzzle solver Tammy McLeod says, "There isn't a single strategy that will work for 100% of puzzles, but in the majority of cases, it's easiest to start with the edge." This does not apply for non-rectangular puzzles and some puzzles where the edge pieces are cut interchangeably, but generally, to solve a puzzle fast, sorting is key. I like to think of finding the edge as the foundation of the learning process in this metaphor. Every person's experience will be different as they learn different pieces of information at different times in different orders, but the information they gain is all part of the same larger picture. Whatever your reasoning for playing fighting games, whether for fun, competition, recognition, or simply the social experience, everyone has to start somewhere. And to avoid discouragement, the more you can complete your puzzle, the more enjoyable your experience will be.
And another one. And another one.
In my experience, there are a lot of basic concepts that exist in fighting games that I wish I knew earlier. I want to share these concepts with you to hopefully give you an edge to your puzzle and help your foundation for learning about fighting games be a strong one. One of the first concepts I wish I'd known about when I first started playing fighting games is that there are turns. A lot of the times, you'll see a brand new fighting game player jump into a game, mash some buttons, and get bodied. Recognizing when it's your turn and when it isn't is an invaluable part of fighting games. Knowing when it isn't your turn is easier to tell against opponents at your skill level, and harder to tell if you're brand new to fighting games or fighting against a player with a much higher skill level than yourself. In this case, there's so much going on that you become overwhelmed and can't even begin to think that a concept like turns even exists. I like to think this aspect of fighting games relates a lot to chess, or more specifically, blitz chess. In chess, you move a piece and it's the other person's turn. During your turn, your opponent has plenty of time to react and decide what their next move will be before any consequences are materialized. In blitz chess, time controls for each player in a game are 10 minutes or less, and in bullet chess, each player is only allowed 3 minutes. In fighting games, there's a lot more going on in much quicker intervals, but the idea of taking turns still exists, and it's crucial to making the fighting game experience a more enjoyable one. In fact, if you watch blitz or bullet chess, the differences between this and this begin to diminish. Just as the chess player knows what each of their pieces provide to the game, knowing what your character does is a key part of a fighting game. One of the first things you'll learn is a quarter circle forward motion, which is famously known for doing the Hadouken or the fireball. Hadouken! While the Hadouken is a fun move to learn, your character's normals are just as important to learn and solidify. And to be honest, this is pretty intuitive, and it happens naturally, but it's worth taking time to actually think about and observe what your character's buttons do. When I press this button, this animation happens. Connecting those two together will help you process other information more quickly, allowing your experience to open up into new areas. Training mode really shines here. You have time to test space, quickness, recovery, and direction, thus ingraining what the move actually looks like without the pesky irritation of an opponent. So you know that there are turns, and you know what buttons will cause your character to do which move. All of a sudden you recognize it's your turn, so what do? The answer is not anything. In fact, when and what you press is more important than pushing a button just because you can. If it's your turn, there are a lot of factors to consider when deciding what the most ideal button press is. Spacing and knowledge of your character's buttons helps a lot here. If you're standing full screen and don't know which button makes Dawson do that punch where his arm gets all stretchy, then what good is knowing that it's your turn? While this might seem like more of an advanced concept, the idea is actually quite simple. Have a game plan. When it's my turn, I'm going to press this button and one of 3 things is going to happen. It's going to miss them, or ideally it's going to reach them and they'll block it, or they won't. The button you've predetermined to press is one that will A, reach the opponent, and B, reach them before any of their moves reach you. In my experience, the best way to practice putting all of these ideas together is to play against another human whenever possible. A global pandemic that limits gathering in large groups has made playing against humans a little less easy than it was in the past. There are other factors to consider, such as netcode, internet quality, natural disasters, power outages, or even pets. While playing against a computer can be a good way to start playing against a dynamic opponent, computers are also made to play a certain way. Fighting games originated in arcades where the main goal was to take your money efficiently. The AI will let you do well enough that you'll come back, but after a point they'll start to beat you seemingly unfairly. While the AI in fighting games has changed over time, the core idea remains the same, that there isn't a true replacement for playing against another human. You learn how to pick up on habits, patterns, you learn techniques that are both new and old, and ultimately you have a meaningful experience with another person. While these are all useful things I wish I had known, the hardest to implement and maybe the most important advice I wish I had been given early on is to walk before you run. Something that gets talked about a lot by top players is when people come to them with this preconceived notion of learn everything you can, learn the meta, and all the best optimal combos, they'll tell them that it's actually not true. Because combos don't mean anything if you can't get the hit in the first place, your sick setup is worthless if you're constantly getting knocked down yourself, and the most broken character in the game won't be able to save you. Execution is really important here. Get comfortable with consistently making your intended moves come out, so when you get the opportunity to do the thing you practice in training mode, you don't crack under the pressure. As you gain knowledge and comfortability, you should then start thinking about adding in something more complicated. You press the right button for the situation and got the hit, find a combo that you can continue off that button. Say you've gotten comfortable with pressuring your opponent, now is the time to try pulling off that setup you worked so hard on. Many people become discouraged when learning new concepts, techniques, and philosophies all at once, but it's important to remember that learning is a gradual experience and mastery won't come overnight. That being said, every little bit of help counts. I'm Ken Tubo, and I hope these things I wish I knew earlier about fighting games can help your puzzle be put together a little quicker.